Hello everyone, today's episode review on the new Marvel film Eternals. I watched this last night and it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. I had quite low expectations, but it wasn't great. And I think it wasn't great for a variety of reasons. I'll get into some of them. It wasn't awful, so we'll talk about the good stuff. And maybe at some point I'll say this is going to be spoiler territory now, because some of the bad stuff you can't really, or some of the bad storytelling decisions that I think they made, you can't really discuss without saying what happened. So I'll let people know if you want to carry on listening to it. But essentially, Eternals is about a group of superhero type beings. They've all got special powers. They're sent on to the Earth during ancient Babylonian times. This film starts off in Mesopotamia, and they're there and they're fighting monsters on behalf of a celestial. A celestial is like a godlike thing, and he puts them there. They're sort of his soldiers. They're fighting these beasts, and the film itself goes back and forth in time from then to the present day. Something happens, the band gets split up, the band come back together, or do they? And of course there's 7,000 years. That's quite a long time to cover a lot of different storylines, and there's about 8 characters in this. It's definitely an ensemble piece. A lot of famous actors, some good performances, a lot of actors that I wasn't really aware of. Or I recognised, but this is the first sort of feature-length film. For anyone that's watched Game of Thrones, Robb Stark's in this, as is Jon Snow. Angelina Jolie's in this. There's a British actor in this, I forget his name now. And there's a few others that I really recognise from different films or TV shows. It's directed by Chloe Zhao, I believe that's how you pronounce her name. She directed Nomadland. I think that's what it was called. I have no idea what it's about, but I think it won an Oscar. It came out last year. So she's the director. It's a long film, 2 hours 40 minutes, and this was this was the first Marvel film, I think, in their 12-year run that got a negative score on Rotten Tomatoes. That's not a website I use or have ever used, or I don't really know many people that do, but I believe in America it's quite a big deal for production companies and stuff. When I used to watch YouTube shows about Hollywood, the industry, they would often talk about that and then box office and all that sort of thing. But I can see why it got rotten. I can see why it got rotten on the website, because the film's just not that good. The storyline, it's a bit bloated. The review, I won't say too much about it, but yeah, overall I would say it's not very good. However, I went in with very low expectations, and as just a standalone film, it was okay. You know what? This film might have been alright. It still wouldn't have been great, but it would have been better if this was the first film to launch the MCU. And I'll get onto that in a little spoiler thing that I'll do in a second. But considering it's part of this universe that includes Thanos, Spider-Man, Captain America, Iron Man, and the fact that they refer to those characters, but then so not very good. That's my review of Eternals. Unless you're a massive Marvel fan, and they are real, because it's the busiest. I've been to the cinema 6 times now in the last 10 days, and it was by far the busiest. It was packed. I didn't stay for the end credit scenes, but I googled them afterwards, and I'm glad I didn't stay. I might talk about that in a second as well. But yeah, so not very good unless you're a massive Marvel fan or you have a cinema pass. If you don't fall into either of those categories, I would not go and see this film and just wait till it's on streaming services or on your Sky or whatever. Okay, so that's the review. This is now going to be like slight spoiler territory. So the characters, just knowing what the storyline is, you might be wondering, why do they all suffer from inertia? Why don't they do anything? Why aren't they involved? If they're here, you know, before Socrates and before Christ, and they do go up, like, well, then the next scenes they're in the 14th century, and then you know, AD, sometimes they're like 400 BC, all over famous cultures, different landscapes, different sites. There's like a love story, there's a twist. In many ways it's a hot mess, but that being said, they do still try to tie it together. But they basically, since we're in spoiler territory, it's these Celestials putting seeds into planets, and when the planets are full enough, a Celestial will burst out of the planet, and Earth is now, in the present day, in the film, ready to release one of these Celestials, but they thought they were there to like help life grow and stuff, so they sort of go against their maker, but one of them doesn't, and it's just it's a little bit played out, and it wasn't that clever. And yeah, the post-credit scene, I suppose it's quite quirky and stuff, but the post-credit scene, apparently Harry Styles is introduced as a character called Eros, Greek god of love and that sort of thing, and that Eros character is Thanos' brother, and it's Harry Styles, and he's like called Starboy, which is crazy, but yeah, so it didn't really make sense as well. I will wrap this up in a second. It didn't really make sense as well, like it's a cataclysmic apocalyptic event happening because of this Celestial being born, but there is no other superhero, but they're in the same universe and they've referenced them throughout the film, so that didn't really make sense. Yeah, it just wasn't that. Oh, and finally, this will definitely be the final thing. The villains were like really bad CGI, sort of like wolves, monster things, that you can already tell in a couple of years that it's going to look bad. I would bet, not that I would bet, but yeah, and they're like, by the end of the film, there is like a lead one that just like sucks out the powers of the other one, but it's just, yeah, it's not executed well, perhaps, in my opinion. But like I say, that's the spoiler review. A little bit more detail about what happened, well, definitely what the twist is almost, and a few other little bits and pieces. But yeah, not very good in my opinion. Probably the first really bad film Marvel have done. Not that it's really bad, and there are other Marvel films that are like it in that way, but right, I'm going to leave it there. Cheers.